Have you noticed that your partner typically responds either critically or defensive when you bring up different things? You've noticed in your relationship that this relationship going back and forth typically only has two responses. He's either critical of you and putting you down and sometimes demeaning or belittling the thoughts, the opinions that you had, or he's defensive at what you're bringing up, saying that that's not him, that doesn't really connect, that that's not really the issue, and trying to move past it as quick as possible. Today, we're going to dive into a couple different aspects about does he show up critical or defensive in your relationship? Two common ways that a lot of people will run away from problems or try to avoid them so that they don't have to be accountable for them or so they don't have to deal with them in the moment. Now, this isn't just narcissists that do this. You find this in all types of relationships. And you might notice today as you watch this, you're like, wait a second, like that's something that I struggle with, or that's something that I struggle with in even a healthy relationship now that you've moved on. But what we see is a lot of times people that struggle with this criticism or defense when it comes to interpersonal relationships, especially partnership, a marriage, whatever that might be. So, if you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness of narcissistic abuse and help break people free of the trauma that they're trapped in, whether that's in the relationship or out of the relationship. The whole goal is to break you free of the obsessive thoughts, the trauma bond, to start moving you forward into a happy, a healthy, a whole relationship as you move forward into who you're called to be. So when we talk through this piece of criticism, now I want to differentiate. Criticism is different than constructive feedback. You see, when someone gives a constructive feedback or a constructive critique, it's meant to be able to help the relationship grow, right? Like it's meant to be able to help it move forward in a healthy and a positive way. The hard part is when you're with a toxic person and when you're in a relationship with someone who is constantly getting triggered in this negative way, it produces a different aspect of not positivity, but negativity. Now, in this regard, you might be bringing up a critique. Hey, this is something that makes me nervous. This is something I'd love for us to do better. This is something that could you help me with? And all of a sudden it becomes like an issue in the relationship. Not an issue because it's such a big deal to you, but because of what the other person is doing with it. So, like I mentioned, in a healthy relationship, we have constructive criticism, and it's helpful and it's essential automatically for growth. Like it involves this open communication, this dialogue. It involves having empathy for one another and a focus on actually improving the relationship, not on proving a point. So many people lose the entire war just to try to win a certain battle. Now, what I mean by this is like you might have an argument with your spouse, and all he wants to do is win at the argument. Prove that he's right, prove that everything is like what he said it was, like prove his point. The hard thing with this is he might win quote unquote like the battle of like winning the actual argument by just making you shut up and not making you prove your point or show that you're actually right. But at the end of the day, like he's losing the entire war of does he actually want this relationship? This thing you have to look at too over a period of time is you'll see guys that will only focus on let me prove that I'm right. And when they focus on that so much, it actually destroys the entire relationship. Someone that's in the relationship that's only looking to prove themselves right will destroy the relationship long term. This is part of the things that we see inside of narcissism, that someone is so obsessed and so consumed with being right. I always wanted to view myself as being good, and I always wanted to view myself as being right. It's pretty much never wrong in my mind. I always tell myself that I was right. I would always tell myself that I had the idea, the thought, the thing that mattered the most. When in reality, it wasn't true at all. But it was something that I was telling myself over and over and over to try to make myself feel better and to try to boost up my ego. So I would never tell anybody that I was wrong. I would only go back and forth with maybe I was less right or maybe I wasn't as correct as you, but I wasn't wrong because I wanted to make sure that I was right. So think of this. I want you to just imagine for a moment you're in this relationship and you're able to discuss an issue, whatever that might be, whatever that hot topic right might be for you. Probably one of them is like money or sex or something in the marriage or in the relationship that you mention it and like just like blows up every time. Picture discussing this issue with your spouse, with your partner, and without there being any blame, any judgment. And both of you are actually working on a solution together. What would that actually look like? What would that actually feel? Like, how would that be different than the relationship and the things that you have going on right now? You see, because normally when we talk through this aspect of critical or defensive, someone will get critical, someone will get defensive. A narcissist oftentimes will get defensive to try to avoid accountability, to try to avoid responsibility. So a narcissist builds a wall of defense that separates himself, separates the ego that's behind the wall from you. Thinking, oh, you're attacking my ego. You're attacking who I am. You're attacking and making me feel bad. Thing is, we can't necessarily make someone just feel bad if they're actually acting in a bad way. That's just the facts. And whether a person points it out or whether they don't, it will be something that the narcissist feels. Doesn't want to feel it, so it gets compartmentalized, disassociated, pushed down, moved past as quick as possible, but it is something that still has feeling to it. Oftentimes, this piece of of defensive responses are this aspect of like just an emotional shield. Let me put this up to be able to protect myself, to be able to protect myself from attack. Now, real or perceived, it doesn't matter. Narcissist is typically going to put a wall up just for everybody. Of like, you're attacking me because you're saying something. You're giving me constructive criticism. You're critiquing me. You're saying something that I don't want to hear. Because typically it's exposing my ego. It's exposing the things that are actually inside. So I need to put up this wall to make sure that I don't actually deal with the issue that's there. Have you seen this in your relationship where he's trying to be really, really defensive about the things that are going on? He's trying to push away and trying to make sure that like he's right, trying to make sure that he's good, that he's the one that's like not being proved wrong in any sense of the word. But he's trying to make sure, wait a second, like this has to be, and he might be blaming you. He might be projecting on you. Might be triangulating you with someone else. Might be pushing the focus anywhere else but here. And this is one of the hardest things to be able to break through is the wall that a narcissist creates. In reality, you can't break through it. It has to be broken down from the inside. That wall oftentimes is so thick and is so hard, no one can actually get through. They can't break through to a place where you can actually see and understand, where you can actually connect with them on a deeper level, because that would mean them having to open up to their vulnerability of their ego inside that says they're so amazing, that says they're so great, but they know they're not. So they're constantly running back and forth. So how does he respond in the relationship now? Does he respond critical? Does he respond defensive? When you bring something up, does he start pushing it back on you? You say, hey, I feel disconnected. And in the next conversation, he comes back and he's like, I just feel disconnected. And you're like, wait a second, I just said that. And what you'll see is oftentimes narcissists that will flip it around back onto you over and over and over, taking the same phrases, the thoughts, the ideas that you've just said and switch them back onto you, almost makes you feel crazy. Makes you wonder of like, what is going on? I just said this, but it's only just an attempt to confuse you a little bit more and to make you feel bad for the emotions and the feelings that you have. Or you might be in the relationship today and he's incredibly defensive. Sometimes his defense is just revealing a mask underneath, revealing something that's actually there. Doesn't always mean that, but the majority of the time you'll see a person where you bring something up, hey, did you cheat on me? And the person is super defensive. I'm not talking about someone who just says, no, I didn't cheat on you. But talking about someone who's going over and above and off the chain in one sense of saying, hey, no, I didn't do this. I can't believe you'd say that. Like, are you crazy? And now they start flipping it back on you. Narcissists oftentimes won't be content enough with just saying no. They'll have to go to the extreme to prove the point. And oftentimes, because they're feeling bad, typically because they've already cheated, because they're feeling bad, they're like, let me push you down so you never bring that question up again. Because how dare you bring up something that I'm actually doing? How dare you expose something that I'm actually feeling? How dare you expose something that's actually wrong going on inside, but I don't want to deal with it. You see, the majority of the time when a narcissist is getting upset at your feelings, at your opinions, at your emotions, it's because they don't want to deal with their own. It's because they don't want to have to actually open up and actually work through the issues at hand. They'd rather have to deal with anything else but their own issues. So they'll switch it back on you. They'll make you focus on you. They'll confuse you. They'll put you in a fog, all to try to make sure that the attention is not on them. However, this makes sense because when we break it down, a lot of times you're going to see the partner in your life respond critical or defensive to the things you bring up, to things you talk about, to even not even things you bring up, just things in general, because they don't want to be exposed for the things that are underneath. If you want help understanding narcissism and these nuances a little bit more, then I invite you to join our 7-day challenge. It's at escapetoxicity.com, and it's 7 days for $7. Have you just start off, understand reactive abuse, the trauma bond, the things that you've struggled with of like, am I crazy? What's actually going on? And start moving forward in your healing process. If you want more of an accelerated aspect whenever you interact or talk with me, you can go to rawmotivations.com. Would love to be able to help you there. Love to help you move forward in your healing process.